welcome back to Great Wellness Getaways. As we've been sharing in our podcast the last few days, it's a little different. We have been talking about some great wellness getaways across all types of travel in this great land of Canada. We've been talking about what the future holds for tourism. We've been looking at where stakeholders are sitting today. And as part of this program, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome an industry colleague and friend, Keith Henry. He's the president and CEO of Indigenous Tourism Canada. He has been a leading force for the growth of Indigenous tourism across our great nation, Canada, and starting in British Columbia a few years ago. Keith, we've had an opportunity to get to know each other through many, many years, 15 or so now, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I'm so happy to welcome you to the show. How are you keeping?
Well, first of all, thanks, Cheryl, for having me on the show, and I appreciated the introduction. And it's been an honor as a Métis person to be helping grow Indigenous tourism for, a number of my years in my career. It's been quite a humbling experience and quite rewarding. So to be, to put into context how I feel about the impacts of COVID-19 for some of the work I've been contributing, right? It's not all been about me, but certainly helping be one of the people helping push our industry forward. It's been really hard to be, it's almost tragic in many ways because, I've seen it took us so much heavy lifting to help build Indigenous tourism, whether it was in British Columbia in some of my past work. It was already being built, but it was continuing that build. And then to see the rest of the country start to really catch that sort of desire to want to build Indigenous tourism and see the entrepreneurs come together in the communities and just see it all dismantled in 6 months to such an extent that it has. It's on a personal level, I guess I'm keeping as well as I can, but it's pretty challenging to see what we do face in front of us. I mean, I try to remain as optimistic as I can, but I'm also a pragmatic person, and as we can all appreciate, we need to build a feasible, sustainable industry, and right now that's a really big challenge in front of all of us.
It is indeed. And, to your point, I do want to talk more about how our Indigenous partners in tourism have been affected across the country, because as we both know, tourism as an industry globally has been absolutely decimated. It is the most gravely affected, according to all the stats and the data that are now coming out in every country around the world. However, there had been so much work done around Indigenous tourism, and it was poised to be our leading sector, was it not, for our country?
Yeah, it was actually Indigenous tourism was, we've grown several hundred businesses in only the last few years across the country. We had about 1,800 businesses or so as of 2019, December 2019. So only, basically, from today, roughly 9 months ago. And we'd come from, it was only about 10 years ago, we had only 800 and some businesses. We've over doubled in 10 years. Our revenues were accelerating. Our GDP was going up at a rate of about 20 to 23% a year, outpacing the growth of the tourism sector itself. So we were seeing substantial, both international and domestic interest in exploring Indigenous experiences, whether they were hotels or cultural centers or restaurants, festivals and events, outdoor adventure. So there was what we were seeing was why Canada was becoming a global leader almost in the last few years was simply because we were seeing such a diversity of experiences and businesses being created and owned and operated in an authentic way by our communities and our entrepreneurs that it was it was something to really be proud of, and Canada was really gaining world recognition for that development. And it really was another way to separate how we market British Columbia, where we are today, or the rest of Canada as a unique destination. And nowhere else in the world can you go to experience the beauty of, I think you've heard me say this in past years. You can see, beautiful landscape, you can see beautiful oceans and water, you can see beautiful mountains, but that's not unique to just Canada. There's a lot of places in this world, but what you can't see anywhere else is the unique, authentic Indigenous culture that we have in this country anywhere but here. So what we were really helping see was that everyone was embracing the role of Indigenous tourism to help package the way we present Canada to the world and to each other in this country. So yeah, it was pretty exciting times, pre-COVID, and it had taken us so long to get our own tourism industry buy-in here in Canada, but
Mhm.
I felt we were really almost there, and now, we just see that. I don't think it's going to change in that regard. I'm just saying that I'm just hoping what COVID hasn't done is we're trying to right now save a crisis. I mean, it's an absolute collapse of our industry, and it took us so many years to build 1,800 businesses, and we're going to lose many of them now.
Do you have any statistics on that at this point, Keith, or is it too soon,
Well,
perhaps?
we did some research, and in June we released a report from the Conference Board of Canada, and we forecast minimally we're going to lose 714 businesses out of 1,800, and that was assuming. Now, the caveat to this is that was assuming that the U.S. border would open up in July, and that we would see a lot of no real barriers to Canadians traveling freely throughout the country, both of which aren't true. So unfortunately, we're going to be doing updated economic analysis with the Conference Board of Canada, and we're going to be updating our inventory. And I'm hoping that we were wrong and that there was more businesses that somehow survived and maybe just hibernated. But the way it looks today, I think that we may lose more than I'm thinking the number will be more closer to 1,000 businesses will be lost.
It's absolutely mind blowing, isn't it?
It
It's
is,
astounding.
and to be quite honest with you, our three largest areas of losses will one British Columbia is expected to have some of the largest losses. Ontario is going to have the second largest losses, and the north throughout the Yukon Northwest Territory, none of it. There's just no business to be had for the most part. There's some local business, but it's such small numbers that it's just not going to be feasible for businesses to survive. So then the second challenge around that is, do these businesses have enough capital or liquidity to refinance? Do they have enough cash in the bank to survive it? And in our case, the Conference Board of Canada showed the analysis we put together. We said most of our businesses were about 6 months away from shutting their doors, and that was as of April. So now, unfortunately, as we enter into September, we're starting to hear more and more reports of businesses actually closing for good. So, and some of it isn't just bankruptcies. A lot of it actually that we're hearing so far is just sentiment that there's no future in tourism. And so some of our smaller entrepreneurs, of some of them, I won't use names because I don't want to, because they
Mhm.
haven't told me. I'm just saying that there's a lot of small Indigenous entrepreneurs that run outdoor adventure, guided walking tours, things like that. A lot of those individuals in other parts of the country are just, they just can't survive off this income now, so they're going to go off and do other work, and getting them back to tourism is going to be really challenging once we are able to fully reopen.
It certainly is, and it's very wearing on all of us in the industry, and it's sad. However, in all these conversations I've been having of late with our leaders of tourism, including yourself, there is an element of optimism in the sense that our industry, Indigenous included, the mainstream tourism with meetings and conventions, the cruise business, all of that, there is a resiliency within our peer group, and if not even an element of positivity through everything. And I've spoken to several of the Indigenous operators, as you know, many of who are personal friends, and some of them have pivoted and are now trying to bring their colleagues into their circle to help grow that. Do you see an opportunity in the months and indeed the years ahead for us to actually come together and look at this differently from the inside out, as opposed to how we have been forced to look at it from the outside in?
I absolutely do. I think that, we've all, like, I mean, the essence of our industry has all been small, sort of intimate kind of settings. We're a small group, many of our businesses. So it's something we've kind of been already a part of, and really we've focused on. I think the days of mass tourism are going to be gone for a long time, and we've been worried about that. So it's kind of interesting that COVID-19, although we're going through the initial challenges, in the long run, will probably reshape tourism in a way that will be actually more attractive for Indigenous communities to support. Because, a lot of Indigenous communities in the country, we've come a long ways in terms of communities embracing, whether they're First Nation, Métis, or Inuit. There's been more support for getting involved in tourism and not being perceived as Disneyfying it. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot of optimism because tourism is having to reshape itself, right?
Mm.
Many communities didn't want mass tourism. They don't want busloads of people coming and taking pictures and leaving. And they want people that want an immersive experience, whether it's enjoying their culture on the land or doing whatever it is they're doing in many ways. So I think this will be helpful to us in a lot of ways. It's just that the hard part right now is just trying to get through what does this transition
Mm.
look like, and the pain of business owners and I understand where people are coming from. It's important we maintain that positivity. And I trust me, I do, last week we signed an MOU with YVR or Vancouver Airport Authority. We're at our national role. I'm very proud of the work of our team that we continue to try and create opportunity to raise awareness and marketing. But at the same time, I have to be realistic that I get, literally dozens of calls a week of businesses closing. And somewhere in between all that, those indigenous owners of those businesses are devastated, and good words are not enough. And I think that I hope that as we rethink tourism into the future, we also need to rethink what is the inventory of businesses we do need to have to make sure we can maintain a certain level of sustainability, right? And I think the other thing that I think needs to come out of this is, we have to measure the success and impacts of tourism, not just on dollars and cents or GDP or visitor volumes or hotel stays or just the traffic going through airports. I mean, for Indigenous communities, it's around the social and cultural impacts as well. And is it positive or negative
Mhm.
is the other side of this for us. And so I think that I would encourage all of us in the tourism space that as we evolve this industry, we also look at other indicators beyond just the sort of economics of it. Because today is an example of we've been chasing the economic success, and now we're in a position where it's pretty challenging right now. If we're brutally honest, I mean, British Columbia and the entire country, for that matter, has been, revenues have been challenging with very few exceptions out there. So, I think it is cause for some positive things, but I just want to be really practical that I can't in good conscience say that not all of that is shared by Indigenous businesses all across this country, because I take those calls on a daily basis.
Well, I concur, and I'm actually really very honestly interested and keen to hear more on your thoughts of the social impact, because I've long been a part of that camp of sustainability. And we all understand business revenues, all of that, but at the heart of it, perhaps we don't. And perhaps that uh, I'll be blunt and say that greed for that bottom line dollar for the big corporations, that own hotels and that are driving convention centers and governments and things like that through taxes, all of that, it's giving us pause, isn't it? And it's forcing us to look at it differently, which you suggesting that the Indigenous culture understands that is so obvious. That's just so clear to me and many others. And I actually see an opportunity for you to be the leaders in the return to what will be a new normal. We can't possibly go back to the way we were, can we?
Well, I don't know what the new normal, you're right. But my fear is that humans, forget that you're Indigenous or whatever culture you're from.
Yeah.
As an industry, we've shown that in 2008, we went through a challenge, we rebounded, and it all became about the same metrics of success. I don't think that's going to change. I hope it does, but I think that ultimately we're going to be driven because it is the desire to create tax revenues. It's the desire to create business profitability for certain large corporations in many cases. And I'm not saying, we don't need profitable companies. I'm just saying that I hope that we give ourselves more pause and thought around social license. I think it's really important. And let's just hope we do have a new future in tourism and how we measure success. So let's talk about, I'll use British Columbia examples, which are very relevant, I think, for your audience. You know, look at what happened in Haida this last year. There's been an ongoing challenge for years over sport fishing in the area. And it wasn't that, you know, people from Haida didn't want to work at sport lodges or didn't want to be part of being guides in non-Indigenous owned lodges. But the fact is, there's only so many salmon up around Haida, and it's not an endless resource. And stocks have been depleting for a number of years. And the Council of the Haida Nation had made a number of decisions multiple times over the years, their governance process, to limit the impacts of sport fishing on their food fish. I mean, this is how they serve. This is their main food. And slowly but surely now we're seeing that has become part of the change to the tourism sector there. It's taken them many years. I'm hoping COVID-19, and we've seen even through this process, some of the non-Indigenous lodges reopen there, and it's caused all sorts of friction. We got to find a better way to move forward together. And that's what I'm getting around. How we measure success hopefully won't be the same when we come out the other end of COVID-19, because that is not we're seeing in a moment of crisis and that conflict increasing. So those are the examples that I hear about in the veil of the Indigenous community issues, through ITAC. And that's not isolated by any means. We see these kind of growing conflicts across every part of this country, where there's a local non-Indigenous operator, they bring people into an area, there's no benefits left behind. So I always find it funny, because when I hear a lot of the main conferences, people commit to these philosophical beliefs, but when you really do the analysis, it doesn't really materialize. So we have to challenge ourselves, and hopefully what comes out of this is a lot of those companies that were doing that probably won't survive. So that's one positive thing, I guess. I hate to be ruthless about it, but I mean, it will create a whole rethink of all of that. So I think that's the positive stuff on social impact, that it's going to come back. The other side too is for Indigenous communities, like we have our Indigenous businesses, right? There's about 1,800, but we're always working carefully with our 630 plus First Nation communities. There's Métis settlements in parts of the country. There's Inuit communities. If they take a position that tourism is something they don't really want to see in their territory, that really adds challenges, right? And there's a lot of that kind of conflict under the radar that I'm aware of. So this has given us a break on that pressure. But I will say that as we go forward, it's going to be important that we are careful in that COVID-19 has now increased the concern about tourism in their backyards. And so we're going to have to continue to rebuild that confidence and social license for tourism. So on a number of fronts, I guess this is going to recalibrate the entire Indigenous tourism world as we knew it prior to February. And we're living that right now, and my role is living that, just trying to help maintain as many businesses as we can, and then tackle a longer term strategy on how we're going to hopefully help communities feel more comfortable with tourism coming back.
Keith, on that topic, can you touch a little bit on the MOU with YVR, because that represents the future and exciting opportunities, and also tied into Destination Indigenous, because you've taken quite an exciting change in direction there. And looking through the website and what you're offering, I see a lot of positive growth and opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, last week we as much as we're dealing with those ongoing challenges we've spoken about, we do have to try and maintain our core group of businesses. And one of the ways that ITAC's doing with many of our Indigenous, provincial, and territorial partners is creating new marketing platforms, right? And so last week, YVR is by far one of the most progressive airports I've ever been a partner with in this entire world. I mean, I've had the I guess unique opportunity of, with our work as ITAC, being brought into many other international destinations where they're trying to build Indigenous tourism. And never, when I go into many of these places through the airports, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? And YVR for years now, because of their unique relationship with the Musqueam community here near the airport, you come to the international through the international access. I mean, it's an absolute beautiful Indigenous welcome, and it's what sets that airport apart from any other in this country. If you go to Pearson's a beautiful airport, but it's just brick and mortar, and it's got a lot of nice amenities, And yes, it's got a nice Air Canada lounge and it's got all these wonderful things about it. But you don't get you don't get any Indigenous welcome. If you're an international guest that wants to understand the culture of Canada, there really is not much there, right? And I don't mean disrespect to the airport, but
No, no. But it makes
so
you so proud, doesn't it? When
it does.
when you walk through, you just go, oh, yeah, I'm home. It's,
Absolutely. So
it's
with
so
that,
beautiful.
and we want visitors to understand when you come to Canada, whether or not they go enjoy an Indigenous experience, we hope they do, but we want them to realize there's something different about Canada. It's not just 150 plus years old, it's thousands of years old. And here's part of that what makes it a special place. You're coming to somewhere beautiful and special. And so we loved it. So when we started to think about, since we were working with YVR since last our conference at the International Indigenous Tourism Conference at Kelowna last year, they approached us well, we've been talking together for some time, and then we agreed, let's get an MOU done. COVID hit, so it delayed it a bit, but we've been working on that for about a year. And basically, I was so excited last week when we had the signing. We held it at the Osqueu, their air terminal. So it was wonderful to do it at an Indigenous-owned airport or airline company located on their grounds, and then with the Musqueam First Nation. And it was really to signal, here's a new partnership, a 3-year partnership, and it's about really how else can our Indigenous tourism industry play more of a visual role in YVR is really what it's meant to do, whether it's video content throughout the airport, bannering going up to the airport on the roadways. So there's a whole set of tactics we're now putting in place to back up that work. And YVR was very progressive and saying, we want to do this. We didn't want to do it for political reasons. We know visitors are interested, so let's give them what they want. So it's great. That leads us into this whole rethink of how we've created Destination Indigenous. We want, we launched this last year also at the International Indigenous Tourism Conference, and it's a way to continue to create Canada as a unique Indigenous destination that wherever you go, whether you're here in Vancouver where I am today, or you're in Toronto, or you're in Halifax, or you're in Yellowknife, or you're in Nunavut, everywhere you go, this is an Indigenous country. It's an Indigenous land. And we have unique experiences that we want you to try and make it easy for you to find. So all of these things kind of go in tandem, of course, and the new platform has the interactive map, and it's got all of more of our business profiles, and it's just making consumers more and more aware of that platform. So it's been an exciting time. Like, as I said, it's despite our challenges, our industry is trying its best to try and create domestic support and awareness. And I think, I know our Indigenous businesses our Indigenous tourism businesses that are on that platform are very proud and really need that marketing support because they just don't have the revenues coming in to invest a lot of marketing on their own right now. So these things are really important for them. And so we're going to continue to, over the course of the next 12 months, we have a series of other things we're working on that we hope to have other sort of public profile of Destination Indigenous with other major partners. So, we're doing these things as we speak. And it was I have to say last week was really exciting. I felt like, okay, we're officially now in recovery. We're in recovery. We're moving forward. That's it.
Yeah. So good. And you need those little bursts of inspiration along the way. We all do. And that's part of what all of this wellness is about, is that, it's the mental acuity. We have to keep going through this. We have to be positive, which last question, quick, if you don't mind. We've got some new leadership at the helm with Destination Canada. Marsha Walden has left Destination BC, where she's been for almost 7 years. And she's taking over for our country nationally. I know there's been some great collaborative opportunities with you together. Do you see this growing into a bigger opportunity now? And I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to tell any secrets, but
no, there's no
we're
secrets.
excited.
I absolutely very excited because I've known Marsha. I consider her a really good professional colleague and friend. I worked with her in my role in BC before. As soon as she got that new role, we connected. We've had we've had a couple of really good conversations. So what I like about Marsha is that person, that role at Destination Canada has to have an appreciation of the wide variety of interests and needs to build and rebuild rebuild tourism in this country right now. And I believe Marsha's experience in BC was, is a very large player in the tourism space. She has that. And what I especially appreciate is that she really understands the importance of Indigenous tourism. So I'm very excited. I think she's going to be a great ally. And, we have an MOU with Destination Canada, and this is going to continue to, like, I felt they've been without a full-time president CEO there for the last basically year. And so I really am relieved that they've got someone now we can really work closely with. And we've already started some great collaboration.
Oh, that's exciting to hear. Well, my friend, this has been highly informative and enjoyable. And I know that we've got, we have such tremendous leadership with you at the helm with Indigenous tourism, but your team, as you said in the opening, is so much a part of it. And you're surrounded with great collaborators and players who want to see the success that you had earned so much before come to fruition again. And I know it's going to happen. We just, as you said in one of your letters that you addressed people, that we got into this together, all of us, and we're going to get out of it together, aren't we?
That's right. You know what? We already have a plan to fully recover. Now we're just working with partners to how to support the plan. I believe within 3 years, with the right support, we can be back to 2019 levels. And I know that's not super exciting for some people, but for me, I know how far we've gone backwards in 6 months. It's going to take us 3 to 4 years to really get back to those levels, but I know that we can get there. And to me, that's why I believe we will get through this, and it's just a matter of us working together continually, and just being as much of we really need to work, whether we're Indigenous to Indigenous or Indigenous to non-Indigenous as an industry. Now has never been a more important time for us to pull together, and I know together is the only way we're going to come out of this.
Oh, well said, Keith. Thank you so much. This is Keith Henry, the President and CEO of Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. We've had a wonderful conversation, and I hope you'll come back again really soon, because I think you're going to have interesting progress reports as we go along. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you for
Stay
having me.
safe, be well, and we'll talk to you really soon.
Sounds good.